Hello and welcome to The Ripple Impact, the podcast where we dive into those fascinating ripples that create waves of change in brands, businesses, leadership, and in life. I'm Laura Barber, founder of The Ripple Impact, a strategy and storytelling advisory that helps founders and leaders build brands that are felt, not just seen. After more than 20 years inside global businesses like PepsiCo and Coca-Cola, I've always believed this, that brands aren't built through visual and words alone. They're built through emotion, memory, and the signals people absorb before they even realize. And sound has always been one of those most powerful of signals. Each week, I sit down with bold thinkers and what we call wave maker guests to explore the lessons that you can take into your brand and your business. Today's episode is a special one. It's a continuation of a conversation that started right here last year and has become something even more tangible. I'm delighted to welcome back to the show Karsten Kjems, founder of Sonic Minds, a global audio branding agency. Joining Karsten today is John Cleworth, who led the process of translating the Ripple Impact business strategy, personality, and values into a sonic identity that genuinely feels like our brand and what we stand for. Karsten, welcome back to the show. And John, very big welcome to the show. It's great to have you both here with us today.
Thank you, Laura. It's great to be here. I felt we should be singing a song as an intro. Hello, Laura. How are you doing, Laura? Something to...
Well, we have got a sound. We have a new sound.
We do.
There we go. I'll sing in harmony, Karsten.
Okay. There we go.
Thanks, Laura. Nice to be on the show.
Yeah, welcome both to the show. It's fantastic to have you here. It was one of our most favorite episodes from 2025, hearing about the power of sound in branding. Yes. So it's lovely to have you on the show. And actually, I'm putting my money where my mouth is because I'm such a believer in sound that I was like, I've got to call you guys and say, right, help me with my podcast, help me with my sound, and help me really bring to life the values of my business through sound and really take all the lessons we learned last year into practice. And that's what we're going to share with everyone today. So it's a lovely, lovely process to go through. But before we get into all of that, if any of our listeners haven't had the joy, and they must listen to it, they haven't had the joy of listening to the podcast with Karsten last year, can we just wind back a little bit? And for anyone that's new to the show, or this is the first episode they're listening to, one of the things that really stuck with me last year was our first conversation, Karsten, around the belief of the power of sound and why it really matters to brands, to businesses, to organization, and that it's not just decoration and then it's a nice to have, that it's fundamental to how people experience the world, products, and brands. Can you wind us back to our last conversation and give our listeners a little snippet into the power of sound and why it's so important for businesses?
Well, that's right. My name is Karsten, and I am the founder of Sonic Minds. I've been doing audio branding for more than 20 years now. And what is audio branding? Well, today, audio branding is converting a brand personality, the soul, the vision, and the mission, the values into sound that they can be used in all brand touchpoints. So you said earlier, a brand needs to be felt as well. And that is where sound and music is so strong, because the music is the language of our feelings and the soul. We also use it in our language when we say, it doesn't sound right. What do you mean it doesn't sound right? Is it, the instrumentation, or well, it doesn't feel or sound right? This is where we don't have any rational thinking. It doesn't feel right or sound right. So it's so important. Like, I'm really glad that you said that you took your own medicine, Laura. So that's what we do: convert brands into meaningful audio experiences. That said, we also have our philosophy that is very important to me to share, that we believe that when we do break the silence, it has to create more value than the silence itself. Right. Otherwise, we're just making noise. And I'm saying that because according to different data sources, 20 to 30% of the population are what we call HSP, highly sensitive people. Some are with lights, some have with senses, I have it with hearing, some have a hybrid, all these things. But I do think that many of the listeners here today can recognize this. In terms of getting stressed or distracted by all these information sounds, music here, in-store sounds here, noise from the vents or from the kitchen, etc. All these appliances, products, and services we are surrounded daily in the modern life, they want to connect with us through sound, but also visually. So we are getting bombarded. So that's why we see it as our mission to make the world sound better, brand by brand, product by product. That's our overall mission.
Yeah, fantastic. Such an amazing mission. And, I think sound is one of those things that, unless it's music or it's film, you don't really think about the power of sound in your day-to-day life. So when we talked about last time, the microwave, the dishwasher, the coffee machine, your doorbell, your car, when you're traveling through a big city,
Musing.
sounds are all around you, and they're so important as information carriers and senders, but also about meaning and emotion and feelings, and how brands can use that to such a huge advantage when they communicate with people.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point you bring up, Laura, that sound is everywhere. Because it really is. More than ever, sound is absolutely everywhere, right? From the moment you walk out of your house in the morning, you're bombarded with some kind of sound. Luckily, we don't think about it consciously so much. It would be annoying if we were. I think Karsten and I think more consciously about sound than most. Uh, but it's a great point you bring that up, because sound today is also a premium, right? We see it with noise cancelling headphones, where now we're striving or fighting to find silence, actually. So it's kind of turned around. It's the opposite thing nowadays. Now we're fighting for silence, and that's a premium, silent retreats, noise cancellation, all this kind of stuff. And I think it's an important point, because especially with sonic branding, it's very important, at least with Sonic Minds and our philosophy about respecting silence. We're actually quite proud of respecting silence, not sound. Going back to the question with power of sound, Laura, sound is actually two things. It's sound, but it's actually silence, because without silence, you don't have sound, or vice versa. It's a bit of yin and yang. You have to have both. And I think at Sonic Minds, we really put importance on the silence side of things. It's a bit counterintuitive, I guess, but it's very important from our perspective.
And if I can add, John, the user journey for brands today has become so complex. Many user journeys starts on a device like this, a phone, smartphone.
Yeah.
Then you might call the company, or you will go into the website, or you get hit by a commercial on your social media feed. You listen to that, you see this. You go to the product, might have a sound as well. So it's a lot more diverse audio soundscapes brands are having. And we have been using the last 50 years to educate brands in having a visual identity. You have your own very strong visual identity. All brands has their own, unique visual identity with the colors, fonts, primary colors.
It's a standard today, right?
It's a standard today.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But we see more brands also, well, we cannot not use sound. It isn't an option. So whether we like it or not, we need to communicate in sound. And if you don't do it strategically and with intent, we're just making noise. We might, wasting our media spend. Why do we accept, why should I listen to this cheesy in-store music, or why should I listen to this noisy beep, beep, beep? I just paid £1,000 for this product and it sounds like a piece of toy.
Yeah.
And we had a big, huge house appliance client, and they produce all kinds of stuff for your kitchen. So let's say in the morning you want a piece of toast, boil an egg, and have a cup of coffee, and put it into the dishwasher. Suddenly you heard cacophony. Hey, I just want a piece of coffee, a cup of tea, and
make
a
my life
toast.
simple.
And then beep, dot, ding. Oh, hey, shut the up.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more about understanding where are we today, and respect the power of silence, as John said. Really good sound design shouldn't make any notice of itself. It should be intuitive. That's good sound design. So it has become more complex, and many brands are waking up to this, especially due to the e-cars and the smartphones and the podcasts, etc. They have so many brand touch points nowadays. How do we use sound here? And they don't have a strategy. So that's where we come in, give them the full overview, where and how to use sound, and then also help them understand how should you use which sounds in which platforms, in which situations. Because a good sound in a TV commercial perhaps isn't the best sound for your notification sound for your app, or the intro for your podcast, for that sake.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you talk about not just putting noise out into the world, but actually putting meaning out in the world. And I think that is so powerful, because as you said, brands and products give out sound. Some products, and naturally, as part of the way that you use it, but also the brand and how you interact with it. And I think what people and brands often forget, that the two most powerful memory evokers are smell and sound.
Exactly.
And if you are not utilizing sound, you are hugely missing out. And the power that brands can have in terms of recognition. Brands are fighting all the time for attention, but it's also about recall and recognition. And if you're walking past something, you might not see it, but you might hear it. And that's why sound is so powerful.
Exactly. And you can't close your ears. We also know from research that when the TV commercial comes on, what do people do? Second screening, or go to the kitchen for another beer, whatever. But they still listen to the TV.
Yeah.
So subliminally, the brain picks it up. That you might have heard this a couple of times before, and you can recognize if I sing this to you guys, da 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 da. I won't say the name here, but I think
No idea.
According to tests, 60 to 70% of the world population can recognize the name of that brand just by singing those notes.
It's funny you say about TV as well, Karsten, because just yesterday I was walking along the street, went past an apartment window, and I heard someone's TV on really loud, but I heard the end of an advert and an audio logo came on, blasting through the window. I thought, I know that brand from walking home past an apartment window.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's very, that's very powerful.
That is
stuff.
The power of sound, isn't it?
You know,
Yeah,
and it's the
incredible.
power of, like you say, Laura, with memory, because sound is the second most memorable sense, which is why, people with dementia, they can still play the piano or sing songs from their childhood, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's very potent, very potent. And with that potency comes a lot of power, right? Going back to sonic branding, that's why sonic branding is really taking off now as an industry like visual branding did a while ago and is now a standard. Now it's sonic branding's time, because recall, recognition, all that stuff you said, very potent, very powerful. Yeah.
But also trust, I would say, John, is so important, because if I follow a brand that, that I love or like, and if it suddenly sounds cheap, I mean, you're no better than you sound.
Yeah.
If you can say all these values, or we are the best, or innovative, what have we not, but you sound cheap, you sound annoying, then you are experienced annoying, because it feels like that. So you need to look at all these brand touch points where you do use sounds and make sure that, are we actually empowering our communication, or are we diluting it here because we're just using stock music or random music? Who is responsible for how you sound? Otherwise, it'll just be random and it won't sound good.
And sound has never really been an afterthought for me, but I think in brands, it's so easy for it to be a tag at the end of the brief when you've created something. It's like, well, what music should we use? No, sound should be baked into the brief. Is like, what are the feelings and the emotions, and what's the journey? And as you call it, what's the user experience journey? And how is sound helping or hindering? How is it building information? How is it warning? How is it helping? How is it inspiring? Whatever. It is often an afterthought. And I've been very lucky to be part of organizations that really take sound seriously. So after the conversation we had, Karsten, I was like, we need to have a conversation about my podcast, because sound in a podcast world is so important. So it's incredible to go on the journey with you guys. And I think what I'm super excited for the conversation today is that we can bring to life the process of creating an audio brand and using Ripple Impact as a little mini case study of how you create sound, and taking the values of my business in terms of human stories and candor and curiosity and energy, and how you create a sound from a strategy. And that's an incredible thing to do. It's nice to be able to lift the lid and lift the hood on that, for people to experience what actually is it like to create a sound. So I would love to give our listeners a little inside track into the process that we went through as a team, and how we took my brand strategy, my values, my beliefs, my personality of what I'm trying to do, and how we created that into sound, and actually what was the process. John, I would love you to walk us through the process and how you approached it, how we worked together, the workshops that we had, so that everyone can get a feel of, if they were to do this for their business, what would this look like?
Yeah, sure. It's a nice way for us to see how actually audio branding works, because at its core, I would say, with audio branding and what we did with your podcast music, Laura, was, like you said, just paraphrasing, but taking very abstract values, things, very abstract ideas, right? The idea of candor, or the idea of being friendly, or the idea of energy, or whatever it might be. Taking those abstract core brand values and converting that into something relatively tangible, which is music, is exactly what we do. It was a fun process, because the Ripple Impact, firstly, it's a great name, right?
Oh, thank you.
Already, I remember from the beginning thinking, do you remember, Karsten? Oh yeah, there's a sound to that. Ripple.
You can see it if you hear the word, if you have a square button but the sounds round, there's a mismatch there. So we go very deep into design philosophy and the music theory and psychology. So it's also giving you and you, Laura, but also our clients, a vocabulary to understand, how do I express myself in sound? Something modern and up-tempo. What do you mean by you're modern or ripply or candid, whatever? What does that mean to you? So we actually play different soundscapes. Is this wet or dry? Is this acoustic, electronic for you? Is this modern or old school? Okay, this is not modern for me. This is too modern for me. Okay.
Do you remember that, Laura? We went through that phase. So just for the listeners, perhaps I can quickly describe,
Yeah, please do.
how we did it. We started by just looking at your brand. You delivered us some great material, who you are and all the visual identity and everything. We took those core values, those 4 words and your tone of voice, and then we said, okay, how does that sound? And we have a few tools to get to that. If you remember, we did listening. So like Karsten says, soundscape listening. What is ripple to you? Or what is a wave to you? How does that sound? So slowly taking these abstract words and then converting it into a real thing. We took those takeaways from the listening tasks. So things you like crescendos. Crescendo is just rising, a dynamic, rising from soft to loud or instruments growing. And that's also an analogy to a wave, right? So we took ideas like that, crescendos, driving feel. You talked about emotions like interest and intrigue, which is important for the format of a podcast, is to inspire kind of these emotions of like, oh, this is intriguing. I want to hear more. You want to always look around the corner to see what's coming. It's very important for podcast music, at least. You also want it to be positive. There's always this theme of water as well, with ripple, impact, wave, all that kind of stuff is very watery. So we just kind of slowly unpacked all those abstract concepts and went, okay, could sound like this, a bit like a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Okay, crescendo, that represents wave. That's one piece. Great. And then make a sound tied to that. Ideas is one of your key brand words. So we say, what's an idea? Well, a sonic way of thinking up an idea is, ding, I got an idea, right? Okay, let's take that and convert that word idea into a literal sound of clicks. So slowly you see we start to build up these puzzle pieces like, okay, here's the sound of a wave, here's the sound of an idea, here's the positive feeling with harmony, here's XYZ. And pretty quickly we have all these pieces and then we just have to compose them into one jigsaw puzzle, a finished image. So what listeners listen to when they hear the music we've made for you is just a piece of music at the end of the day. It's a finished jigsaw puzzle, which is just an image, right? What they don't realize is actually that jigsaw puzzle was a long process of figuring out where the pieces go and how to fit them together. And that's the fun part. And that's, you remember, Laura, that's what we did over those weeks together, is figuring out that puzzle. Yeah.
But also the negations, what do I not want to sound like? So remove all the stuff you're not is also a way through. But I'm also curious to hear from your side, Laura, how did you experience the process? Because you're a savvy branding expert as well from your background, and you have been listening and been through a lot of creative process. How do you experience from your side? It's also really interesting to hear.
Yeah, it was an amazing process actually, because as a brand owner, you know your brand so deeply, and as most brand owners, I'm sure, listening, you have your brand strategy document, you have your values, your personality, you have your tone of voice, you have everything worked out. But I think when people ask you questions in terms of why is it like that and why does crescendo matter, you're like, okay, well, actually the crescendo is important because you want to build excitement and anticipation, and there's something coming, and we want to build this energy. So all of a sudden you're saying things out loud that you never really knew.
Yeah.
So actually, when you go through this process, it's actually a really interesting test to go really deep on who you are as a brand, what your tone and style and values and personality, and what is really, really important to you, and critically why. And this is such a different way of doing it in the context of sound. And I never said to you, I want a crescendo in the music. But when we played some of the tracks, it was like, actually, that bit really works because there's excitement, there's anticipation. You know it's going somewhere. You know there's going to be something that happens, and you want to keep that interest. But then I remember having the conversation with you that actually the crescendo kind of has to go somewhere. It can't just then flatten out. So how do we keep that dynamism going was really interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
I can add, Laura, sorry, John, that if you could make that brief, you would have written the notes, you would have written the score, and you said crescendo here, diminuendo here, the tempo, but you can't. So we are actually converters. We are taking your language in colors, which have codes and your fonts and your text, and we're converting that into sound. So it isn't exact math. We cannot say that innovative sounds like this or ripple sounds like that, but we use music psychology. And then combined with our process and our creative minds, this is the best representation we believe that you should sound like based on A, B, C, and D, and what feelings you want to evoke at listeners. And yes, we can actually test that. So when we play 3 different sounds or 2 sounds, if for larger brands, we can go into the market to their peers and say, to which degree do we experience this as a bank? Or what do you think fits this spec for a car company or for a diary company? So we did that testing actually for one of our clients, Arla. I think you know that in the UK as well. We did the order logo for them. So it is possible to test, is this experience as a tech company or a diary company or a podcast company?
Yeah. Yeah.
And people don't say exactly this is why, but yeah, it feels like this. That's fine as an indication. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so fascinating because I think often people think about category codes in the context of colors and maybe shapes. So especially where brands have a product and packaging is really important, we think shapes and colors and fonts and things like where there are category codes where you look at beauty, it looks in some way, you look at wellness, you look at fitness, you then look at chocolate. They look different. But also what's interesting is that a lot of categories can sound the same too, or there's at least expectations that banking would be serious and considered and professional and
Mostly blue.
so, yeah, and blue. Yeah, exactly. That they have almost their codes, and that plays out in audio language too, which I think is fascinating. But just to add to your question about what was the process like, I think it was deeply insightful for me to kind of look at my brand and my business from a completely different dimension. And through the questioning that you guys did for me, it really highlighted things that was like, actually, that is really important because, and it was the why that was so rich. And I think it was the why that then fueled the brief in terms of the music that we ultimately created. And Karsten, you mentioned this a moment ago, is also what are we not? And I think sometimes brands forget to do this. And I think it's so powerful to be really clear on what you're not, because it helps you steer away from anything that just doesn't feel tonally or style or visually or audio, that it just doesn't feel like you. So I never wanted anything too masculine or aggressive or pushy or too strong or too harsh or too jarring, because I want this podcast to be like a chatty friend, like someone that you kind of want to be in the conversation. So there had to be an element of warmth and inviting, but still interesting and intriguing, and that you want to keep listening.
And I can just add on to that, an important part you remember, Laura, is positive, warm. I like that word, warm and inviting, yet also serious. So not happy-go-lucky, right? So always kind of balancing those emotions there.
Yeah.
And I like that you say, Laura, that the process was fun for you also to look inside you and your brand, because Karsten, I'm sure you can agree with this. We have a lot of feedback from our clients afterwards saying, we loved X, Y, Z, sound great, whatever, all the good stuff. But actually, we learned so much about ourselves because we sat and we discussed ourselves. We discussed those 4 words. We discussed finally those pillars. We actually talked. We never got a chance to sit down and talk about those things. We just decided on them and moved on with our lives, right?
I think as well, when you're running a big business, like a word can mean so many things to so many different people, and especially if you've got a multicultural organization, a word can actually be quite misleading when you take it into other languages or other cultures or other offices. But I think if you can describe it, those next layers down of the deepness and richness, the word will stay the same, but it's the why that then really means, why are we saying that we are friendly and warm? Well, we're not flippant, we're not too casual. We actually talk about some really serious topics on this podcast. So we can't be too laissez-faire and almost a bit silly and naive or comical. There'll be light and shade in all these podcasts of joy and sadness. We've had tears in some of our podcasts. So some of these topics are really serious, but we want to do it in a way that feels inviting and approachable for any of our listeners. And you helped bring that to life, which is incredible, that you can take a word brief and turn that into meaning through sound, which is so powerful.
Yeah,
I can add, John, many of our clients have really felt, we really got ourselves a language, a vocabulary, so we can discuss on a more insightful way rather than, I don't like this, because if you don't have this strategy or this vocabulary, it's typically the hippo, which just means the highest paid opinion person in the room who decides. Well, if the boss like this, we'll go with that. It was important that we based it on insight and the data. But also the challenge you told me earlier, Laura, the old sound you used for your podcast, you went into this library and you wrote perhaps some of your brand words, and suddenly 1,000 different tracks came up and you had to listen through. So I think that's also the struggle many companies and brands have. We say we are innovative, modern, feminine, whatever it could be, engaging, and then you have thousands different options. And with AI, it's never ending. but you don't need 1,000. You only
No.
need one that is you. How do you get
Yeah.
that? How do you remove all the 991,000
Yeah.
tracks that doesn't fit like you? So
Yeah.
not against stock music. Some of this is fine, but it's also very, it is, as it's where it is, a stock. It's not tailored to you. Just, I don't think your logo, which I'm looking at right now, is stock. I guess something you have
Absolutely not.
designed.
No. And it's interesting that you talk about the old music, because you're right. It was stock music from the platform I used from my podcast. And there was literally thousands of options. I filtered it down to the words that were important for me, but the words that were already in the platform as well. So they were already given to me. So I wasn't able to put my brand and my values into that to filter and search. That would have been a lot more easy. But I'm telling you, and I promise you this, I listened to every single track I promise, every single track within
How
that,
long
because
did
it's so
that take,
important to
Laura?
me. Hours. And this is the point, right? Is because the old music I had, I kind of liked it. It was nice. That's
It
the
is?
word. It was nice. It worked. It was fine. And it was the best of the bunch. It's funny because I listen back to it now, and it has a fondness in my heart because it's where the podcast started. But what we have now is the ripple impact, is me, is the business, it's our values and what we stand for. And I can tell you now that the amount of time this is going to save me and my organization is unbelievable, in podcasting, but also in social media, in my website. This is sound that is now going to envelop the whole brand and how we communicate across channels, which is so exciting. And I am a solo entrepreneur with a business. I don't have teams across the world in different countries looking for images and stock. So if it's going to save me hours and weeks on end, can you imagine what it would save a big organization, a global organization that uses sound daily through so many touch points? If nothing else, it's the biggest value add in terms of time save. If
I
nothing
actually
else,
got
that's
some
the
numbers
lowest value.
I got some numbers for a company. I challenged them, and say, could you please for the next meeting figure out how many hours, because I do know that your employees, they register what they do, finding this or working on that project. How many hours a year do you use for finding music? She was shocked when she came back to me, because we have templates for all our posts. We have templates for how we do slides or presentations, and logo here, text here. We have photo guidelines. But music was also, we have to find something. They used around 100 man hours a year just to find some music. It was more costly for them just to find the music, to pay for the music. So there's a lot of saving here also in terms of efficiency while having this audio strategy and audio structure. So I don't imagine that McDonald's or other big brands says sound should be used for the next campaign.
I'm actually wondering, and you should drop me a DM, who noticed when this podcast started that something felt different, because we are launching the sound for the first time today. But I would love for us to unpick the sounds and for you to talk us through kind of what you did and how we got to where we are. So
you mentioned earlier, Laura, that when we made this sound, you thought, oh, that's the ripple impact. And perhaps people picked up on it, perhaps not. That doesn't matter. But you'll notice at the beginning of the sound, there's this kind of almost introduction before the music enters, so to say. The concept, something that I was really excited about at least, is, like I said, the words ripple and impact are very sonic words. They conjure up ideas in our mind. So we thought, what's the sound of a ripple? Well, what causes a ripple? It's a drop. And I think going back to your brand and the guests you have, founders and so on and so forth, who create ripples, which end up becoming waves, right? So a small thing can make a big change. It's a little bit of that domino effect. We said, why don't we just try to do that almost literally in sound? So we took the sound of a droplet, one small piece of water, dropping into sound, and then that kind of caused a ripple effect out. You hear an echo going out, and that swells and swells and swells, doing a crescendo like you talked about earlier, into a wave, into the impact. In the first 15 so seconds, you literally hear from ripple to impact in sound, from drop to wave. That's the most exciting part about this. And then once the impact comes, that wave, it shifts energy. And then it goes into the intrigue. Then it hits that podcast related stuff. Okay, something new's happening. This is exciting. Oh, this music. I love this music. It always reminds me that Laura's about to speak and bring some cool guest on, right? So now that I've talked about that whole drop to wave concept, why don't we actually just re-listen to that?
Yeah, let's. mean, I know I'm biased and it's my business, but I just love it. And you talked earlier about the idea that sound can show ideas, like that ideas can be shown through sound. This idea of a aha,
Yeah.
and that is very much in the music as well, which I think is so lovely. I just love it on so many levels. I remember when you guys first played it to me, I was literally like goosebumps. I was like, this is the business. Like, this is how it should sound, which is so powerful. And I think for any brand owner, when you see something or you hear something that is so deeply right for your brand, and everyone listening will have experienced this when you go, yes, that's it. And it makes everything else easier because you're like, yes, this is how we should sound. I'm like, I know exactly I know how to use it. I know what it's going to feel like. And it unlocks so much opportunity. So I'm very biased because I love it. But and I hope everyone does too. So please send me your thoughts. I'd love to hear what everyone thinks of it.
Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned how you feel about it, Laura. We also hear that for other clients in the room. Now suddenly my videos just feels a lot more engaging, or they feel on brand, because before it was always, I made a good film and then the soundtracks took it down or a different place. And it's so important that this is us, and you can also argue and communicate why does it sound like this, almost second by second, because you've been part of the process. So the process is just as valuable for you as just, here's the sound, bye-bye, here we go. Why do I sound like this? You also need the whole meaningful part of the process. So we don't just deliver a sound, we always take the client through the process as you did. And that's where the really value gets, because they can understand why we sound like this, why we don't sound like that.
Yeah.
I also believe that good sonic branding essentially does two things. First, the most important thing is to create beautiful sound, right? Good sound. And people don't have to unpack it. Like, your listeners don't have to listen to this and go, oh, wow, there's a click that represents the idea, and there's the drop, which is the ripple and the wave. They don't have to do that. The main thing is for them to go, nice music. I like that. It sounds nice. It's pleasant, so on and so forth. Or they don't even have to think about it, but subconsciously just feel warm and welcomed and excited for the next podcast. That's the most important thing. And then behind that, as Karsten is talking about, is the second thing of that you can actually unpack it. So you don't have to unpack the sound and why every element is as it is. But if you want to go deep, if you want to dig deeper, you actually realize, wait a second, there's all these layers behind it, and it's truly on brand.
Yeah.
But you don't have to. And I think that's the beautiful thing with sound, is that it first, most importantly, it's emotion, it's feeling, it's the most emotional medium in your design toolbox. That's the most important thing, is that it just makes people feel a certain feeling. Very important for podcasts as well, right, Laura? Because as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, that podcast medium, it's audio only. I actually forget that sometimes, that podcast is really audio only.
You do?
No, but at least I don't think of it as... Sorry?
I said we are on YouTube, so do check us out, and across social media platforms. But no, I totally get your point though, because podcasts, when they're done well, is you kind of feel like you're there. You feel like you're sat along. You may not be talking with them, but you feel like you're in the room or you're in that place where they are. Sound can transport you so easily to a memory or to a place, and it's such an incredible tool.
I can also add that, our brain, we can register a sound within 0.134 seconds, I think it is. Is it a short sound? Is it warm? Is it harsh? Should it be dangerous? Should it be scared now? What is it? We can register so fast. You probably also tried to enter a restaurant or cafe. It says, oh, I'm not going to sit here. Even though you haven't tasted the food or drank the coffee, the noise is too loud or the music is off. So all your senses are on, and you wouldn't watch a film with only 2K or black and white anymore. We expect, is it 5K now or 4K and, HD and surround sound and stereo. That's what we expect. So
and I think exactly, Karsten. I just want to also say that the fact you said, Karsten, about sound works it kind of hits us very quickly, faster than our thoughts hit us. So it's very subconscious, right?
We feel faster than we think.
Exactly. And now that fact is actually the strongest part of sonic branding and the weakest, because it's strong because actually it's the most powerful tool in your brand toolbox because it's so emotional and powerful and fast. But it's also bad because then people don't know it's important because it's too fast. They're not conscious about it working, right? They just feel and they don't think, wow, that sound is good. I need to invest in that. So it's good and bad, pros and cons with it. It's really important that you bring that up.
I agree. And I think sometimes you only really feel the effect when it's either really good or really bad. And why on earth wouldn't you want to sound really, really good? Because as you said, if it's subconscious and it's feelings and it's emotions, that's exactly what brands are. Brands don't actually exist.
Yeah.
Products do, services do.
Yeah.
But a brand is an association, it's a feeling, it's a movement, it's what you tell other people. The product is what you can touch and feel and smell and taste or whatever, or drive. But it's the brand is about feelings and emotions and associations. And sound is such an incredible way of helping or really hindering that.
And for the people wondering if it really does matter, high quality sound, there are many studies out there that you can find showing that even with podcasts, there's been studies of high quality podcast or high quality sound usage in podcasts versus low quality. People gravitate towards high quality. Like Karsten said with screens now, we just gravitate towards high definition screens. And it's exactly the same with sound.
We, as humans, we have always been attracted to beautiful things. Flowers, trees, nature's, partners,
True. Well, I can tell our listeners and our YouTube watchers what an incredible process this has been to go through. It's often very easy to talk about the importance of these things in branding, and having the conversation that we did, Karsten, last year, I was like, do you know what? I've really got to put my money where my mouth is with this, because I believe this so deeply. And I've been such an advocate of this when I've been corporate. I have to invest in this for my business. Because as you said earlier, it's very easy to pick stock for sound, for music, for podcasts, for videos, for advertising. But actually to get something that is so powerful is an investment in your business, but it's an investment in getting the right feelings and emotions across to your listeners, to your audience, to your customers, consumers, shoppers, whoever that might be, is so critical. What message would you give to founders and brand owners and people that are considering this as part of their toolkit? Why should they pick up the phone and talk to you in the power of sound? I'm a full convert, as our listeners know, because I've gone through this process and I'm so proud of the way we sound now. And I wasn't before. I liked it, but it was kind of okay and good enough. But what would you tell founders that our business and brand leaders that they're considering this?
Well, at least start to recognize that it is a thing, and understand that it's more complex than just go to stock music and find something. So they should definitely start simple. What is our primary brand touchpoint? And if the budget is really is low, start very simple, and then you can always build from there. They should definitely, considering when we're using sound, how should we sound, and where should we use it. So it is becoming a must-have rather than a nice-to-have. We can also see so many data out there showing that the effectiveness of the brand impact by not using sound. I think the latest research shows there's 8 times more effectiveness of recall if you have the right sound and audio logos in your communication across different brand touchpoints. So you're actually wasting your media spend in communication, but not having your own audio identity. John, do you have anything to add?
There's a million reasons. One thing is that sonic branding, it's moving quickly now. If you want to be a leader or a follower, I think that's very important to decide. We see a lot of clients coming in now saying, hey, our competitors are doing this thing. Can we catch up? But we also see first movers coming in saying, hey, we want to lead the way, pave the way. It's moving fast, which is great. So jump on it. And the reason it's moving fast is because there's sound everywhere, right? We've got AirPods in our ears. Yeah, it's working. And there's a lot of data to back it.
When I started here 20 years ago, there's only a few brands you can recognize. There was Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Intel, bum, 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 bum. But nowadays, when I look at the strongest brand, the top 100 brands, I can make more dots. Oops, TikTok, yes, this, Samsung, oh yes, suddenly it's getting more
YouTube,
and more brands
Apple,
out there.
everyone.
Yes, they all have their own recognizing sound. And why do they do it? Follow the money. It's because it's working. You cannot build a brand without consistency, and not in sound. If you don't have it in sound, then you're just...
If you want to be remembered, sound is your tool.
Yeah.
If you want to appeal to a certain audience, sound is your tool. Kids are not going to listen to something if the sound's off. They're just not going to go close to a product if the sound's off.
Oh, they're the hardest audience.
Very.
Right. Playing for kids. If they don't like it, they just walk away. They have no politeness to sit there. They just walk out of the room.
And it's a digital world, I've seen things of people having their first test drive virtually, digitally. If you're a car manufacturer and you are test driving a car virtually, sound becomes so important because there is nothing for you to physically experience except for sight and sound. You're not touching anything. You're not sitting in the leather seat. You're not touching the steering wheel. Sound becomes so important in a digital world, and how you entice people to want to listen, because a lot of people scroll with their sound off. How do you get people to put their mics on to listen to you? Well, they're only going to listen if the sound works. So it's such an incredibly powerful tool.
It wasn't only one sound that you got, Laura. It was a suite of sound, a sound system. We don't just hand over one full end track from A to B. We deliver a sound design system containing intros, outros, which one should be used for that? Is it for a product there's also power on sounds for this? So it's a whole system of sounds, just like you have a system of colors and fonts in a template guide. So for these listeners, it's very similar to a visual identity, but in sound, not just a flat audio file you're getting
it's
here.
It's a living and breathing identity. And I think your listeners, they'll get to listen to all these different files over the coming podcasts and hopefully get to relate to it and become familiar. But they'll hopefully hear that it's always changing, shifting, adapting.
I love the two comments of it's a suite and it's a living and breathing thing, because it's true, because there isn't just one sound for everything. Like it doesn't really work. Your different platforms, different messages, different moments. We've had guests come on talking about serious issues in childhood and grief and loss and murder, suicide. We even talked about in one of our podcasts. You're not going to be playing upbeat, happy, clappy music with such serious, powerful topics. So you have to sound right for your brand, but also for the moment in time. So getting to that suite is so powerful, that you can sound right for the right moment is so important. So thank you for mentioning it, because it's so critical. I have one final question, because we have run out of time, which I'm deeply sad about. John, I'm going to ask you, because in our last episode, we asked Karsten this question. So we'd love to ask you this question. So we call our guests wave makers because they're making waves on the industry. And as Karsten, we talked about, waves has a lovely sonic sound. It has a movement, doesn't it? So it's a lovely word to start with. But we call our guests wave makers because they're making waves on the industry. From your view, what advice would you give to aspiring wave makers?
I'm thinking, when you say waves, it makes me think, I'm Australian, so I grew up surfing in the water, right? So I think of literal waves, which I think is important because there is an analogy. There's a reason why you use the word wave. Two things I'd say. One layer, listen more. I'd just say open your ears. Be open to listening. Just listen when you walk out on the street. Listen when you're going home to different sounds, when you're watching the TV, wherever it is. Listen, and then surfer reference. If you listen enough, you know when to jump on the wave, and then you'll see where it takes you, hopefully all the way into the shore. So, I don't know. It's a very vague answer, but...
It's not. It's a beautiful analogy of deeply listening so you can time yourself perfectly, whether that's catching a wave, whether that's taking an opportunity, whether that's spotting a serendipitous moment. And this comes up all the time in my podcast. Like, we've talked to people from all walks of life, and they always talk about these serendipitous moments that happen that create such an impact in their life. But I always say back to my guests, it might have been serendipitous, but it only turned into something because you took action. You grabbed that opportunity, you rode the wave, you listened to the right timing, and you chose to act. So that takes something that is actually really serendipitous into something that can fundamentally change you, your life, your career, where you choose to live, your career, your brand, your business. So listening and timing to catch the wave, I think, is beautiful advice. Karsten, John, thank you so much for bringing the ripple impact to life in such a visually powerful audio way. Like, I can see my brand when I hear the sound. So
I love that way you phrase that.
You.
And
thank you
too,
so
Laura.
much.
We are so happy that we could help you, and thank you for having us joining your podcast. I really enjoy listening to all your great people out there. I think really inspiring people. So I can only invite the listeners to, follow Laura and give her subscribe, because some great people talking, not only hardcore brain, but the people with something on their heart. That's why I'm following you, Laura. There are people who are talking from their heart. That's personal stories. I like that.
Thanks, Laura. And also just thanks for letting us actually talk about what we do. Thanks for the opportunity. It was good fun to actually kind of share what we do and our bread and butter, right?
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been such a powerful journey for me to go through, from knowing the importance and the impact and the power of sound to putting my money where my mouth is and commissioning you guys to really turn the ripple impact into a sound that I'm really, really proud of. And I hope everyone loves the new audio identity. And please let me know in your comments. Please do follow and subscribe for more incredible Wavemaker guests. Karsten and John, thank you so much for such a wonderful conversation. Please do reach out to Sonic Minds so they can help you with your audio branding. It is absolutely worth it. I cannot recommend it anymore. And if you're looking to elevate the human storytelling of your brand, please reach out to us at The Ripple Impact so we can see how we can help your business. That is a wrap on this Ripple episode. Tune in weekly for more bold voices just like Karsten and John. We will see you all next week. I'm Laura Barber. This is The Ripple Impact. We will see you then. Thank you both. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.